What do you smash, Chuck?
Oh, dude, I eat anything. I mean, you can't get this fat.
What do you smash?
Pizza, steak, chicken,
Krispy
Kreme donuts. Like, Ernest, sometimes when I'm eating the Pringles, I'll eat half the can.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, it's just rude of me to leave a couple chips in the can. So
Well, if it's half, it's not a couple, but.
I remember last year when I came back from All-Star, I was tired.
Yeah.
You know, I was tired. And it's tough because it's one of my favorite events. It is my favorite event of the entire weekend. So
But one thing that DeMarcus doesn't get credit for is he enjoys playing basketball. He likes to go in the gym. He likes to mess around in the gym. He likes to goof around in the gym. Maybe a little bit too much, but he enjoys playing basketball. And his misery has come because he's been on a losing team most of his career. And he's not going to be on a losing team. He's going to be on a winning team.
And I know there's going to be instant judgment, analysis, criticism. We're either going to be, at the end of the night, unbeatable or in big trouble.
Let's give you a stat stuffer on the Brooklyn Nets, who tonight are in Orlando. Look at this Nets team. And oh, by the way, remember that spectacular James Harden performance the other night? The Rockets lost. The Nets beat them. They've won 15 of their last 20, and they are at 500 for the first time this late in the season since the 12-13 season. Let's go around the NBA and talk more about these red-hot Nets with America's favorite analyst, Sarah Kustok, on the greatest League Pass watch in basketball right now. Sarah, thank you.
Jared, thank you I thought you were going to say on the greatest show ever. I'm not sure I made an appearance yet on 10 Before Tip, so I feel honored. This is a big day for me.
And you just made our new marketing campaign. Thank you, Sarah. It'll be our first, but we have a new one. Sarah, thank you for joining us. And I'm wondering here, as we're within 3 weeks of the trade deadline and we're wondering what the Nets may do or not do, what's just the overall vibe of this team who really is shocking the NBA right now?
You know what, Jared, I think that's why it's interesting talking about the trade deadline and what moves potentially could be made, what, decisions you need to make in terms of filling up spots. The one thing I will note throughout the course of the last 20 games, this team has extraordinary chemistry. They've figured out what their strengths are for each individual player. They understand how to play well with one another. And, it's a lot of those cliches you hear and talk about with teams, but there is entire buy-in. If you look throughout the course of this whole stretch, there is different players that have stepped up at different moments. You've had different lineups closing out the game. They've dealt with injuries, but they understand the system, how they're going to play. It's all about playing through the pass. They've improved defensively, and it's some of those little things and some of those players that do the stuff that don't pop up on the stat sheet that made making the biggest difference with this group.
And while nobody's going to feel sorry for Brooklyn because every team goes through its own issues,
right,
you have to say the Nets are doing this probably without their best player right now, Caris LeVert, who got off to a scorching hot start.
Well, and that's the thing, Jared. The offense was really predicated on playing through Caris LeVert. He was the guy who had the ball in his hands most. He was able to create for himself, for others, and excellent defensively. So when he went down, it really was a shift on how this team's going to play, who's going to be their go-to guy at the end of games. And, of course, coming out of the day, they dealt with a horrible stretch. They lost 8 straight games. A lot of those were close games and a lack of execution down the stretch, but they have figured it out. So they're without Caris LeVert. They've been without Allen Crabbe for a long stretch. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson is back and Jared Dudley out now, but just it's been a mix and match, but it goes back to the fact they all can play multiple positions. So a lot of times when you have guys that are positionless and can play on the ball, off the ball, it certainly helps.
In the first response you gave us, you mentioned buy-in. The first name that popped into my head when you said that is D'Angelo Russell. Can you give some perspective from being inside and with the team every day? What has changed? What has he done to perform at such a high level this year?
Jared, I've been around this individual since he came here to Brooklyn and how he's continued to figure out what Kenny Atkinson asked of him. But if you'll watch how he plays, and it's very different than systematically what the Nets have tried to do before, which is getting to the basket, getting to the free throw line, shooting 3-point shots. He's now, I believe, made the most 2-point shots in the league at this point. And Kenny Atkinson has allowed him to play to his strengths. His strengths are being a crafty, shifty guy who works the ball screen in the pick and roll, gets to his mid-range game, finds his floater around the basket, but he's really doing what he does best. He's got excellent court vision, but on top of all of that, his teammates love him. He's a good teammate. He does the right things. He's there for one another. He hasn't closed out a lot of these games, and it has not seemed to matter, but He's someone, too, who has improved on the defensive end, and that's been a big aspect of it. He may not be a great defender, but working with what he has, he's improved and been very solid in that area, and that allows him in many cases to stay on the floor and also with limiting his turnovers. But I've been ultimately impressed with just the professional D'Angelo Russell is and the type of character that he's brought to this group.
Ladies and gentlemen, making her 10 before tip debut.
Yes.
Superstar analyst, Sarah Kustok. Thank
Jared,
you so much for joining us.
I hope you'll have me back. Thank you.
We will.
Thank
You can guarantee that. From Sarah, we go to What's at Stake with Sekou Smith, NBA.com. Let's look at the Eastern Conference standings. The difference between the Nets in the 7th spot and the Wizards in the 11th spot is just 3 games in the loss column. So when we look at these teams and we think, okay, the top of the East is really formidable right now, 1 through 4. Which one of these bottom-tier teams could do something between now and February 7th trade deadline where you might think twice about making this a 4-game sweep, 1 through 4, against one of these teams in the first round of the playoffs?
Well, if we're including all the way down to Washington, Jared, which they could be the wild card team in the league if they were to make a move now. The way they've played since John Wall went down, you give them a piece that's much needed, somebody that could come in and help jumpstart what they got going on. Bradley Beal playing the way he has. They could be a team that really threatens somebody. The other one's Detroit. If they could just find a way to figure out how to get that perimeter group of players they have to play at a higher level and more consistent, the way Blake and DeAndre, and Andre Drummond can cause problems for somebody in a playoff scenario where they didn't make it, that's another team to me that could cause serious problems for somebody in a playoff setting.
Sekou, we got more coming up on 10 before tip. Luke Kennard, Duke legend, on the Detroit Pistons. We're coming back with plenty more on 10 before tip. We'll take you courtside, show you who's going, tell you about some injury updates and everything else you need to know. Sekou and Jared coming back live at 10 before tip, presented by Ford.
Go to Marcus, go to Marcus, go to Marcus, go to Marcus, go, 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 go.
DeMarcus Cousins posting this on his Twitter feed earlier today. Oh, yeah, you better believe DeMarcus is fired up for tonight.
Kids got moves, that's all I know. Moves.
I thought they were going to show a video of me dancing, but got disappointed. DeMarcus didn't want to put that up. Here's the Warriors Monstars lineup tonight. Look at all these All-Stars. DeMarcus joined in the starting lineup against the Clippers tonight. Go, DeMarcus, go. With Draymond, with Durant, with Clay, with Steph Curry.
I mean, the combination, of all these different All-Stars is one thing, but it's the fit, Jared. I want to see how they fit because we've had great starting fives before in this league. There have been really potent, star-studded, starting fives. But I can't remember the last time we saw a group with this many All-Star nods under their belt. This is unbelievable.
Take you courtside, give you a look at DeMar DeRozan, whose Spurs will take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. And this is going to sound weird. The Spurs have lost 2 straight at Minnesota. Interesting, because they beat them 11 straight at home. We've got Jason Tatum, Memphis at Boston tonight.
Everything good in Boston?
I think so.
Everything better?
I think they've won 7 in a row at home. We'll see how they fare tonight. Sekou, we'll see you on Game Time. Put a tie on, would you?
I'm going to work
on it. Professional.
Listen.
You'll be joined by the dope professor himself, David Griffin. He knows how to tie a tie. Matt Weiner along as well. Game Time Live. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Ahead of the team's 2-game road swing. Is this news?
I say no, because we already knew that, he was not going to be going on this road trip. That was reported. So there's nothing really new here to me about this news, this headline, though I don't know who to believe in this situation anymore. Do I believe that it's Dennis Smith Jr. that's just he's upset and he's sort of pouting in a way and he doesn't want to be around the team and he's asking the Mavs to trade him? Or is it more from the Mavs side of things, like they were trying to shop him and are still trying to shop him? They're just like trying to save face a little bit now by saying, oh no, we want him back. He's a great communicator and all that. I don't know who to believe here, and maybe it's a little bit of both.
It's not newsy, but yeah, they're trying to massage the situation. This guy's a good kid. You want him on your team because he's not coming back to our team. It sure feels that way. And him and Rick Carlisle, head coach Rick Carlisle, just don't see eye to eye for whatever reason. I don't know if Dennis Smith Jr. thinks his role should be bigger because it has diminished from year 1 to year 2 because the Don, Luka Doncic, is playing alongside him. That's the way it's going to work, though. Yeah, but Luka Doncic is the better playmaker. Dennis Smith Jr. is not going to have the ball in his hands as much.
You think his best bet, though, Smith, even if he does want to be traded, which it sort of appears so, is to come back and actually play for the Mavs. That's
show what
fair.
you can do.
Right.
Yeah, and Rick Carlisle said today, the door's open. He's welcome to come back.
but he's not going on this trip. So there is a little bit of a mixed message happening there, because you'd think if you are Dennis Smith, you'd want to say, all right, well, I'll take that opportunity and I'll try to play again and try to get out there and show my value. Because if he's not going, then it does look like he is sort of sulking a little bit by staying home. It's a very weird situation because he's only 21, a year and a half into his career, and he's certainly shown some potential there. He's not polished. He needs to work on his game. He needs to work on his decision-making, ball handling and shooting. But 21 years old, 100-odd games into his career, that's just not enough of a sample size for me to really determine what type of player you've got. I think you need to work on him a little bit more. With Doncic coming in there, it's understandable the Mavs are like, he's our guy, that's fine. Then try to find another role first with Dennis Smith Jr. because you don't want to be, you've got plenty of time with Doncic here still to figure out exactly, his timeline. They're not going to win a championship this year or next year, but if you can get a player who can play alongside him, and so far Smith has shown that he hasn't been able to, but maybe in time work on a new routine, work on a new way of trying to get those two to work together, it might grow. So it's a very weird situation. I don't think Dennis Smith is completely done with the Mavericks.
You think he'll play in a Mavericks uniform?
I think he could. I just don't think it's like a lock that he's never coming back.
We will see. Trey, our final headline.
Our final headline is from Yahoo Sports, and it's based off a report by The Athletic. Carmelo Anthony has multiple NBA options and is expected to pick one before the trade deadline. Is this news?
Wow.
Take it.
Remember Carmelo?
We have not talked about Melo
in a while.
What do you think?
It's 3 weeks away. For my first question, if he's got a lot of suitors, just pick a team.
What are we waiting for?
Yeah, he's been hanging out for a while. And according to the reports, the Lakers are the hottest topic, or the hottest team, the most likely team, I should say. LeBron James being there, his good bud. But I don't think that's going to work.
Well, they need to make a roster spot.
Yeah, so who would they waive?
Exactly.
It's not Zubats.
No.
After what you saw from him, not only last night, but in the last couple of games, for sure.
And not to compare, put Melo in the same sentence as Michael Beasley, but Michael Beasley is playing the exact role that Melo would be playing on that team. He's played 8 straight games, double digits in 4 of those games, about 13 minutes a game. That's Melo's role. Yeah. And he's playing it well. And you don't have to bring in another player to figure it out. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I can't see who else they would move on the roster apart from Beasley. But Michael Beasley's kind of making that decision hard for them by playing well and by being a decent guy, a decent teammate on that team. And if you bring in Melo, will Melo be able to accept a role that is 7th, 8th, 9th guy on the roster and only getting a handful of minutes a night? That's the big question, whether or not Melo has used this time away from the Rockets to sort of almost humble himself to say, okay, I'm no longer that guy getting 20 shots a night. I have to accept whatever role is out there for me.
Here's the other thing. He's still on the Rockets roster. He's not free to sign with anyone here. The Rockets are still maybe trying to figure out, can we trade Carmelo Anthony, or do we come to agreement, waive him, have to eat some of his salary, and then he then subsequently signs with another team. He still is on the Rockets, so maybe they're still trying to get anything for him. Now, I don't think there's much out there, a team wanting to give anything back for Melo. They know he's not going to be playing for Houston. Why wouldn't they just wait it out and then hopefully have him come sign it, and all it would take is opening up a roster spot? But yeah, I hope we haven't seen the last of Melo, and I don't think we have. I think he will play this year, but I'm not sure it's the Lakers. Is there another team that comes to mind? The Blazers have been thrown around there.
They could certainly use another option on offense.
Right.
It's just, what does Melo give you back on the defensive end? That's the big question. The Blazers, you can't sign a guy if he can go for 15, 20 points, and then he gets just killed on the defensive end.
I thought the Blazers shored up their bench this season.
Yeah.
That's an odd match to
Give
me.
me a team.
I don't have one. I literally don't.
Raptors.
Let's hear from you guys.
Need
the number
guys.
one team.
The Rockets need guys.
The Rockets,
to play.
that's the most ironic part. They don't even want him to play, and they need anyone right now. All right, when we come back, we're going to hand out the dishonor for Worst of the Week. Got some nominees and a winner.